Hi everybody, welcome back to Julie at Home. This video is going to be a continuation of my history update for the Middle Ages, and it is going to be about the Golden Age of Baghdad and the Islamic expansion. I think this could have the potential to turn into a Islamic world in the Middle Ages study. If you wanted to do it in that context, I would probably throw in a few more resources if I were doing it that way. But basically we did this around the time we were studying the Golden Age of Baghdad, as well as some other resources that expand a little bit beyond that. So I'll get to that. I have this year a second grader and a kindergartner, and as I said, this was part of our Middle Ages study. I also have a toddler, but she's not, none of this is directed at her. I always include a lot of books because I love books, and there's no exception here. It is, again, not as big of a unit as I did with our ancient history studies, but more of a mini unit. So here we go. All books will be linked below. All books and resources, as long as I can find them still, will be linked below in the description, so check that out if you're interested. If you've watched several of these videos, you may know that I like to start with some sort of mythology or stories connected to the culture. And so here I have Ayat Jamila, Beautiful Signs. I think I showed this in my first history update video as well. I'll link that above. And I've also have one on Vikings for this year, so I'll link that as well. But this is just a beautiful book of short stories based on Islamic wisdom, and also some like quotes, I guess, or sayings is how you would say that. Like here's a saying there. And this has, again, the stories are pretty short. These are from all over the Islamic world, so it's not just the Middle East or Iraq. This one's from Iran. There was one from Pakistan. But yeah, they're all Islamic wisdom stories, and I enjoy these, and my children enjoy these. I'm trying to find you here's a picture. So they have pretty illustrations. Hopefully the glare is not too bad as well. So yeah, we didn't read all of them. We just kind of did a smattering of them as we were doing this study. And here I have the Arabian Nights. This is a Barnes & Noble copy because it's just beautiful, and I can't resist the beautiful copies. So there's a lot you could go through with this. We ended up reading, we've read some others, and I also have a CD that I will pull out to show you as well. We did most of Sinbad the Sailor. Sinbad has, I want to say like 6 voyages. I'm not 100% sure. So I think we only got through 3 because they're all pretty long. These stories, let me see if I can pull it out here. I mean, that's the text. It's pretty small, and it's a pretty big book. So we didn't get very far. But we did do some of Sinbad the Sailor from here, and there's just lots of options. So if you had the Arabian Nights, you could choose which ones you wanted to do. For some reason, I cannot locate it right now, but we also have the Jim Weiss CD of his retelling of the Arabian Nights. And what I like about it is he actually starts with kind of the background story of Scheherazade and how the Sultan had a new wife every night, and then she'd be killed the next morning. It's kind of depressing. He writes this for children, so it doesn't sound as scary when he tells it, I guess, is when I say it out loud. But anyway, Scheherazade is very bright, and she comes up with a story, and each night she's telling him the story, but she like stops before the end and says, oh, well, you have to wait till tomorrow night for me to continue the story. And so that's the kind of the background of where the Arabian Nights stories come from. It's her telling all these stories. And so he starts with that and then goes through a couple of the stories from the tales, which include things like Aladdin. And actually, I think the Disney movie Aladdin is like 2 different stories meshed together. But he tells both of those, I think. And there's one I really like that's like has a talking bird in it. Anyway, that's good too. I would highly recommend any Jim Weiss CD. We all love them here. I also showed this one in my last one, and this is a book by Demi Muhammad. And if you're studying Islam and you're not Muslim yourself, I think it's really good to have an understanding of Muhammad and who he was before continuing on, I guess, as part of your study of this. So I really like this book. As I've mentioned before, she's very respectful in that he's only shown as a silhouette because they do not show pictures of him. And there's also an honorific in Arabic after his name. So I like that. I, in general, really like her books. I like her pictures. And this is kind of her style of pictures. She uses a lot of metallics. And they're a little bit long. So if you have younger children, you may need to break the book up into several days, or just maybe choose a simpler book for them. But my kids, my two oldest at least, have always loved being read to, and so it hasn't been a problem, and we were able to do this in one sitting. Along with Muhammad, he had a pretty incredible wife. And this outrageous woman of the Middle Ages includes her story in here. It is Khadija bint Khuwailid, and I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but there you go. She was actually older than him and had her own like established company before they married. She was ahead of her own international import-export business and was wealthy. And yeah, and then she married Muhammad and helped him out with things. So very cool. Moving on a little bit more into the Golden Age of Baghdad here. We have 1001 Inventions and Awesome Facts from Muslim Civilization. Not everything in here is from that specific time, but there was a lot of science and culture going on during that time. So this is just kind of, we didn't read through this whole thing, but we kind of just like looked through it, and I read things that look interesting and read things to my kids that they wanted me to. I think there's a page in here about gardening and plants, just as a fun. Yeah, there we go. That's one of my pictures. This is actually, we've been there. That's in Longwood Gardens in Pennsylvania, but basically they started this greenhouse. Started there. So yeah, that's just kind of a fun bonus book. And if you have older kids and doing a book of centuries, something like this would be great to have for them to copy out of as well. Now, as I mentioned, there was a lot of scientific discoveries going on at the time in the Golden Age of Baghdad, and you could get into many different ones. I chose to specifically go into Ibn al-Haytham, the man who discovered how we see, which is a cool story. Yeah, just, I hadn't really thought about it. But he figured out like how the light comes in and reflects or refracts and all the things. So this is just a little National Geographic kids book, level 3. My daughter could probably read it, but I just read it to them. And it has some of the pictures in it as well. It's not super long. It's not the most engaging read. Like, it's not like the Muhammad biography by Demi is much more, I think is much more engaging as a story. And like the National Geographic's just, they're not as much of a living book, but this I was happy with, and I'd recommend. These next ones are kind of fun. This is The Magic Tree House again. Season of the Sandstorms, and I really enjoyed this one actually. This is one of my favorite Magic Tree House books. They end up on a magic carpet at the end. Giveaway. But yeah, they go to Baghdad. They ride camels across the desert. There's just a lot of fun things that happened. I especially like the description of the library there in this. This goes along a little bit better with the Islamic expansion, but it's the most magnificent mosque. I'm just going to read you. It says, when a new Christian king decides to pull down the beautiful Mosque of Cordoba, 3 old friends decide something must be done on behalf of all the citizens, whether Muslim, Jew, or Christian. And it's a really nice story. It's about a mosque. So, obviously, as part of our curriculum, I meant to show you this in the beginning, but let me just insert here that we're doing our Curiosity Chronicles curriculum. And so chapter 12 is Wisdom Blooms in Baghdad. But earlier than that, we had talked about in chapter 6, the Caliphs expand north, south, east, and west. And so these books are kind of connecting both the Golden Age of Baghdad as well as how Islam expanded throughout northern Africa up into Europe a little bit. We did in our chronological study of history talk about the Battle of Tours, where Charles the Hammer stops them in France, so they don't get up further there. But they expand quite a bit during this medieval ages time period. And so that goes obviously as they're expanding, their culture also expands and mixes with the cultures that's already there. And there's also a lot of mosques being built because obviously that's really foundational to them. So I do have some more books. So that's where this comes in. Cordoba, I believe, is in Spain, and that has a large influence there. We also watched a video, I'll see if I can link it below, on the Alhambra, just a tour of it, because I think it's just gorgeous, and it's a great example of Islamic architecture and art. So we looked at that. Speaking of mosques, I have Mosques by David Mcauley. This is a long one. It took us a while to get through. We were reading this beyond when we were studying because I really wanted to finish it. And this is much later in history, actually. This is like Ottoman Empire mosque, but I wanted to incorporate it because mosques are so foundational to Islamic culture, and it really goes into like the different parts of a mosque. I learned a lot from this. It goes through how they built it at that time too, which is interesting. But yeah, I didn't know about all the different parts, and so it really gives you an insight into how they're worshiping. So this one may or may not count as part of this unit. Just gonna put that out there. This is from much later, and we actually didn't read it as part of this at the same time as these other books. We read this in conjunction of when we got to the Crusades in our history study, but you could incorporate it if you wanted to do like a medieval Islamic culture, a medieval Islamic world study, perhaps. It's a book on Saladin. I love Diane Stanley's books, and this is no exception. It is gorgeous. And he was during, there are so many crusades, and they're very confusing. I want to say it's the third, it could be the fourth, but the one where Richard the Lionhearted, evil King John's brother, goes and crusades in the Middle East, and he ended up fighting Saladin. But Saladin was there trying to basically take back, he was from Turkey, and he ended up getting really close to the Sultan of Turkey, and then ended up basically ruling Egypt for a while. And then he's basically trying to take back Jerusalem and the Holy Land, the Middle East area, from the Christians for the Muslims. And yeah, it's a really interesting read. I'm glad we incorporated this because a lot of we're in the United States, and we tend to learn a lot more about Western civilization in Europe and everything. And so when I was learning history, I had learned about the Crusades from the perspective of the Crusaders, but not from the perspective of the people that were actually living there. And so I really highly recommend in some way incorporating that if you're doing the Crusades. It's kind of a tangent from the main subject of this video, but I did want to put that out there because I think it's important, and I wanted to let you know. I didn't have a lot of extra activities for this. What we did do is we had looked at some Arabic calligraphy, and we tried that a little bit. My kids weren't as into it as I was, so it didn't last very long. But I think it'd be really cool to do like maybe your name in Arabic and do some like geometric images around it, maybe inspired by things that you would see in like the Alhambra and places like that. Then the other thing we did is we made a meal, and what I did to kind of combine and simplify things is I had the kids make the Moroccan, there's a Moroccan radish kit. And so, yes, this is not from the Middle East, but the Caliphs did expand through North Africa, and so there are connections in the foods and the culture there. And so we did make the Moroccan meal radish kit. My favorite were the little orange blossom tea cakes. They were delicious. I think I might have liked them more than anybody else and had them for snacks for several days. Yes, so I love Middle Eastern food. I love Moroccan food, and I would like to make it more often, but I don't know if everybody else is a fan. But I really enjoy including food in our studies, so you will see that quite often. That's all I have for today. If you want to expand this into a bigger unit, I'm sure there is so much more you can do, and especially if you are a Muslim homeschooler and happen to be watching this, if you have ideas, or if you're from the Middle East or from some of these places with that rich culture and you have ideas, please let us know in the comments below. This is something for me that I'm learning along with my kids and I don't always know of all the resources. So yeah, please comment ahead, whether or not you're from that culture, if you have some more ideas. Quick reminder to subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss more videos. The button's right below there, big subscribe button. And click that thumbs up if you like this video. It helps me out by letting YouTube know that you like my content. And until next time, friends, I'll talk to you later.